At 8,000 feet over Dover Harbour, a formation of Focke-Wulf FW-190s owned the sky. The English coast spread below them, defenceless against their intended targets. Then a British fighter appeared, closing fast through the haze. It had a massive four-bladed propeller, thick wings, and bold yellow recognition stripes painted hastily across its fuselage overnight before dawn sorties. The aircraft looked brutish, almost primitive compared to their sleek Focke-Wulfs, yet its pilot pushed the throttle forward with deliberate aggression. The German pilots dove to escape, but somehow the striped fighter stayed glued to their tails, matching their descent meter for meter. Its engine screamed at full throttle, a sound unlike any aircraft power plant they'd heard before. A guttural roar that seemed to belong more to a beast of burden than a precision machine. Then came the cannon fire. 20mm rounds tearing through the humid air. Weighted down by their bomb loads, the FW-190s couldn't shake their pursuer. In desperation, they jettisoned everything their ordnance splashing harmlessly into the channel below, while they headed back toward the safety of occupied France. At 440 miles per hour, the striped fighter made one thing crystal clear. The Luftwaffe's daylight dominance was over. The aircraft was the Hawker Typhoon, once nearly abandoned as a failure, now the RAF's most lethal, low-altitude fighter bomber. The challenge and the desperate response. England's southern coast lay exposed in 1940, with defenders scanning grey skies for the next wave of Luftwaffe bombers. The Supermarine Spitfire and Hawker Hurricane, while heroes of the Battle of Britain, faced an increasingly formidable opponent. The Messerschmitt Bf 109E, with its superior rate of climb and speed at altitude, began to systematically outclass Britain's fighters. Air superiority, a cornerstone of national defence, hung by a fragile thread. RAF commanders understood this new threat keenly. Intelligence warned that the Focke-Wulf FW-190, an advanced German fighter unlike anything yet encountered, would soon render existing aircraft obsolete. In response, the Air Ministry issued specification F-1837, calling for a fighter capable of operating at speeds approaching 450 miles per hour at 15,000 feet, armed with a powerful battery of cannons. The specification also demanded rapid climb rates and extended range a tall order that demanded revolutionary engineering. Sidney Cam, the brilliant designer behind the iconic Hurricane, faced an audacious challenge. By the 1930s, over 84% of RAF aircraft were of Cam's design, and he had earned the reputation of being Britain's finest aircraft engineer. His response to the F-1837 specification was to install the massive Napier Sabre engine into an entirely new airframe. The Sabre's 24 cylinders were arranged in an unusual H-configuration 2 opposing banks of 12 cylinders each, displacing 2,238 cubic inches and generating over 2,200 horsepower, more than double the power of the Merlin engine in a Spitfire. Fully loaded, the new aircraft would weigh around 11,000 pounds, with a 41-foot wingspan and a 14-foot four-blade propeller, the largest ever fitted to a single-engine fighter. Initial designs for armament included 12 0.303-inch Browning machine guns, but it was quickly decided that the future lay with heavier firepower. On paper, the new aircraft, the Hawker Typhoon, promised to be a dominant force, capable of speeds of 400 miles per hour at 18,000 feet. The Air Ministry, convinced by the projected performance, ordered 1,000 aircraft before the prototype had even left the ground, a decision that would soon prove remarkably premature. First flight terror. The Napier Sabre's fury unleashed. The morning of February 24, 1940, at Hawker's Langley Airfield was cold and grey, the kind of English winter day when clouds seem to press down from infinity. Philip Lucas, chief test pilot at Hawker, squeezed into the cramped cockpit of Typhoon prototype P522. He'd flown dangerous machines before, but nothing as experimental as this beast. The Napier Sabre engine, with its 24 cylinders primed with exacting fuel and ignition timing requirements, was a mechanical marvel waiting to wake or perhaps to devour itself in flames. 2 Kaufman starter cartridges sat ready in the engine compartment, explosive jolts designed to drag the reluctant engine into life. These were not gentle ignition systems. They were controlled explosions meant to overcome the massive inertia of 24 cylinders and a gigantic propeller. The first cartridge fired. The Sabre coughed, shuddered, then erupted in a roar that rattled hangar doors and sent ground crews diving for cover. Blue-white flames spat 6 feet from the stub exhaust stacks, an alarming testament to the engine's raw, barely controlled power. Taxi tests were unnerving. Controls were heavy, sluggish beyond anything Lucas expected. Even at 40 miles per hour, the rudder demanded every ounce of his considerable strength. Torque from the massive propeller yanked the Typhoon sideways with each throttle input, as if the aircraft was fighting to tear itself apart. The engine's tremendous power created a physical battle between pilot and machine, even on the ground. Takeoff magnified every danger. Lucas shoved the throttle forward, and the Typhoon surged down the runway, hitting 100 miles per hour in 8 seconds, with the nose swinging wildly under torque. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he wrestled the rudder continuously, easing the control stick only at 120 miles per hour. The climb was furious, 2,140 feet per minute, a rate of climb unmatched by any current RAF fighter. But the plane trembled under its own power, shaking as if at any moment the engine might tear itself free from its mounts. Then, at 15,000 feet, a violent flutter ran through the controls. Pressure shifted at the rear fuselage where the main section joined the empennage. The metal twisted with an audible groan, a jagged line splitting open, daylight glaring through the gap. Lucas's mind raced. Bail out and risk the Sabre exploding in flight, or wrestle the Typhoon down to earth. He chose the latter, gripping the controls with white knuckles, praying the fuselage held. The descent was a battle, every control input feeling wrong, every second an eternity. But Lucas's skill prevailed. The landing gear shuddered on contact, the airframe groaning under stress, but Lucas coaxed the aircraft to a stop. The Typhoon survived, but its troubles had only begun. The plague of mechanical gremlins. Hawker's design team raced through the summer of 1940 to fix the flaws exposed by Lucas's harrowing test flights. The Typhoon's tail section was redesigned with external fish plates, and internal bulkheads were reinforced with additional bracing. Wing spars were strengthened to handle the massive engine's tremendous torque. The original 12-gun layout was scrapped in favor of 4 20mm Hispano cannons, giving the fighter a sharp increase in firepower, a shift that would prove strategically important. September brought the second prototype, P5216, but new problems surfaced immediately. The Napier Sabre's sleeve valve timing remained erratic, cylinder temperatures swung wildly between extremes, and power surged unpredictably, causing frequent engine failures. Starting the engine became an elaborate ritual requiring precise fuel priming, exact ignition timing, and considerable luck. Mechanical gremlins haunted every flight. Fuel vapor ignited on hot exhausts, forcing pilots to scramble free, while ground crews doused the nose section with foam. Engines often had to be completely replaced after single flights. Even more insidious was carbon monoxide leaking into cockpits from engine seals, forcing pilots to wear oxygen masks even at altitudes below 10,000 feet, an exhausting and dangerous requirement. In training, a Typhoon suddenly twisted into an uncontrolled spin, its pilot overcome by carbon monoxide fumes before he could react or eject. The aircraft plunged toward the ground. Another hazard was the car door canopy, hinged like an automobile door. While it made ground servicing convenient, in combat it turned into a cage. At high speed, wind pressure jammed it shut with tremendous force, trapping pilots inside damaged aircraft, even when fire spread through the cockpit. As one pilot grimly put it, describing the stopgap protections, "They got fire extinguishers like they are going out of fashion." The manufacturing problems with the Napier Saber's revolutionary sleeve valves proved particularly stubborn. Mass production had led to issues with the sleeve's perfect circularity, causing engine seizures that could happen without warning. The manufacturing tolerances required were extraordinarily tighter than anything previously attempted in large-scale aircraft engine production. Bristol Aircraft Company, normally a fierce competitor, eventually collaborated with Napier to improve manufacturing methods, introducing machined nitride steel valve sleeves that dramatically reduced failures, cancellation and reprieve. By December 1940, the Typhoon program teetered on the brink of cancellation. Every flight revealed new mechanical or structural failures, and squadrons reported more losses from technical faults than from enemy action. The fighter meant to dominate European skies had become a liability rather than an asset. Senior RAF officers seriously questioned whether continuation made sense. But salvation would come from an unexpected source, the Focke-Wulf FW-190. June 1941 brought alarming intelligence from RAF photo reconnaissance over northern France. German airfields revealed short-winged, radial-engined fighters, unlike anything seen before. By August, the Focke-Wulf FW-190 began appearing over the English Channel in ever-increasing numbers. Designed by Kurt Tank, the FW-190 was a remarkably compact machine. Its BMW 801 radial engine produced 1,627 horsepower in an 8,770-pound frame. With wing loading around 42.3 pounds per square foot, it had exceptional manoeuvrability, while top speeds exceeded 400 miles per hour at 20,600 feet faster than the Spitfire Mark V at operational altitudes. Armament was equally formidable. Two 13mm machine guns and 2 to 4 20mm MG 151-20 cannons allowed German pilots to engage from long range with devastating effect. RAF Fighter Command faced a genuine crisis. Spitfire Mark Verses were outclassed below 25,000 feet. The FW-190's blistering roll rate gave Luftwaffe pilots clear tactical advantages, allowing German formations to strike coastal targets and shipping before RAF interceptors could respond effectively. Squadron leader Douglas Bader, the legless ace and one of Fighter Command's most celebrated pilots, encountered FW-190s over northern France in August 1941. After an engagement where his entire squadron lost 3 Spitfires without downing a single German fighter, he reported facing aircraft that climbed like rockets and rolled faster than anything we've seen. The Typhoon program suddenly became urgent. Despite its mechanical flaws, it offered one critical edge: speed at low altitude. Below 15,000 feet, the FW-190's favoured operational altitude, the Typhoon could reach over 400 miles per hour in level flight, with dive speeds exceeding 520 miles per hour, allowing pilots to chase fleeing Germans across the Channel. Flight Lieutenant Ian Mallett recalled the acceleration when pursuing German fighters. "It was like being hit in the back with a sledgehammer when you opened the throttle." The Typhoon, once on the verge of abandonment, would find its purpose. the fighter that found its role. By December 1941, No. 56 Squadron became operational at RAF Duxford with the Typhoon. The aircraft still had reliability headaches, but key improvements had enhanced both safety and performance. Car door canopies were swapped for sliding bubble canopies, giving pilots better visibility and, crucially, a real chance at escape if the aircraft became damaged or caught fire. Tail sections received external fish plates, and oxygen masks became standard equipment to combat carbon monoxide leaks. Engineers developed better fuel system designs and improved engine management procedures. On January 20, 1942, Typhoon pilots flew the aircraft's first operational interception. A Mark IB decorated in bold yellow recognition stripes closed in on German fighters over Dover Harbour at 8,000 feet. The Napier Sabre screamed at full throttle, pushing the fighter to 440 miles per hour, unheard of speed at that altitude. German pilots, pushed to their limits by the pursuit, broke formation and dove for the French coast. The Typhoon stayed glued to them, 20mm cannon fire tearing through wings and fuselage. The Germans weren't ready for this. Shocked by the Typhoon's sheer speed and the intensity of its firepower, they jettisoned their bombs and fled back east. Within weeks, these low-level interceptions became routine, sealing the Luftwaffe's daylight fate over the Channel. By March 1942, German daylight raids had effectively ended. The Typhoon had proven its worth against FW-190 formations. With its role locked in, the Typhoon was reshaped into something far different, the RAF's most feared ground attack weapon, the rise of the fighter bomber. By late 1942, RAF planners envisioned a more aggressive role for the Typhoon. Any invasion of Nazi-occupied Europe would demand aircraft capable of destroying armour, fortifications and supply lines. The Typhoon's immense Napier Sabre engine provided power unmatched by other fighters in the RAF inventory. While a Spitfire Mark IX struggled with a single 500-pound bomb, the Typhoon was capable of lifting two 1,000-pound bombs with minimal effect on its handling. Number 181 Squadron, formed at RAF Duxford in September 1942, was the first to fly bomb-equipped Typhoons operationally. Press correspondents quickly dubbed them Bompoons, a nickname that stuck despite official scowls and attempts to suppress it. Squadron leader Derek Walker-Smith led the first missions in October to strike German supply dumps and coastal batteries near Cherbourg. His formation cut through thick coastal haze, a fragile cloak against the dangers below. Waiting in the grey sky, German 88mm flak guns, radar-directed and potent, shredded the air. Walker-Smith's flight often plunged straight into a wall of anti-aircraft fire, exploding fragments whistling past, hammering wings and fuselage. Each Typhoon carried two 1,000-pound bombs with delayed fuses, forcing pilots to hold level, straight flight for agonizing seconds under concentrated fire. Every nerve screamed to maneuver or peel away, but discipline held them steady. Then the bombs dropped, detonating in towering fireballs that shattered supply dumps below. Yet the cost was stark. 2 Typhoons never returned, and 3 more limped back with heavy flak damage requiring major repairs. The rocket revolution. The limitations of bombing heavily defended targets were becoming painfully clear, but a revolutionary solution was already in development: the RP-3 rocket. This 60-pound projectile, with a high-explosive or armor-piercing warhead, could penetrate up to 4 inches of armor plate. Unlike bombs, rockets allowed for attacks from varying altitudes and angles, letting pilots maneuver defensively while striking with immense firepower. Installation was complex. Each Typhoon carried 8 rockets on rail launchers, 4 under each wing. The rails added 400 pounds and created significant drag, altering the aircraft's handling characteristics. The rocket's forward centre of gravity shifted the aircraft's trim, forcing pilots into extensive retraining. Additional armour was added to protect the pilot and critical systems from ground fire. Combined with its four 20mm Hispano autocannons, the Typhoon's firepower was so destructive that it earned comparisons to a naval destroyer. A 2-second burst from the cannons could deliver 86 explosive shells. In October 1943, No. 181 Squadron launched the first operational rocket strikes with RP-3s against German coastal radar stations near Calais. Each rocket carried a 25-pound warhead, aimed at the concrete bunkers and flak positions of the Atlantic Wall. Pilots dove at shallow angles, rockets streaking past wingtips in pairs. The warheads ripped through fortifications that had shrugged off conventional bombs. Concrete splintered, steel twisted, and radar antennas toppled in clouds of smoke and dust. The strikes were precise, ruthless, and spectacular, a new weapon that turned previously impregnable positions into shattered wrecks. By December, 18 rocket-equipped squadrons formed the core of the RAF's 2nd Tactical Air Force. Intensive training covered target identification, ammunition selection, and coordination with forward ground controllers, a revolutionary system where air and ground forces communicated in real time. D-Day, the moment of proof. The morning of June 6, 1944, began with an eerie stillness over the fields of southern England. In briefing huts lit by dim lamps, young pilots leaned forward, listening as fingers traced lines across giant maps of Normandy. The German defences were marked in thick red, a wall of artillery and armour waiting on the far shore. Outside, crews worked furiously in the grey dawn. Paint still tacky on their hands, they slapped on new invasion stripes, black and white bands circling fuselage and wings, overnight as a desperate safeguard to prevent Allied gunners from mistaking friend for foe in skies about to fill with hundreds of aircraft. The Hawker Typhoons squatted on the grass, brutish machines built not for grace, but for power, their four-bladed props gleaming in the first light. Ground crews pulled the chocks. Compressed air hissed. Then the Sabre engines came alive with a guttural snarl that shook the huts and rattled windows. One by one, the Typhoons surged forward into the murky dawn. They climbed into a bruised sky, clouds hanging low and heavy. Beneath them stretched the English Channel, grey and restless, yet transformed by the invasion armada. From horizon to horizon, ships covered the water. Destroyers, transports, landing craft, and battleships, over 5,000 vessels in total. The Typhoons levelled off at speed 380 miles per hour, each carrying 8 rocket projectiles and the brutal punch of 4 20mm cannons. The crossing lasted 20 minutes. Then the coastline broke through the clouds. Normandy spread below, already torn by naval bombardment. Pillars of smoke twisted into the sky. Roads behind the beaches were crawling with German reinforcements. Panzer IVs, half-tracks, supply trucks, funneling forward through hedgerows. The RAF's revolutionary close support system kicked into motion. Forward observers lit the fields with white phosphorus markers, each burst painting a target in the bocage. Typhoons rolled into dives, the horizon flipping as the Sabre engine's howl deepened into a growl. At 800 yards, pilots let loose their rockets. They ripped away in streaks of fire, slamming into lead panzers and other German positions. More followed in rapid succession, squadrons peeling into steep attacks, cannons hammering. Half-tracks disintegrated, anti-tank crews broke and scattered as 20mm shells walked across their positions. In the hedgerows, vehicles burned. By afternoon, the 21st Panzer Division's assault timetable lay in ruins. German commanders grimly reported that daylight movement near the beaches had become impossible. Above the invasion fleet, the Typhoons circled back through the clouds, their wings empty. 26 squadrons of Hawker Typhoons operated during the D-Day landings alone, a remarkable concentration of air power that proved absolutely decisive. Dominance over the bocage. Through June and July 1944, Typhoon squadrons became the spearhead of Allied tactical air power. They tore through German armour, columns of troops, and headquarters with mounting accuracy and devastating effect. One raid near Lekain left an unforgettable mark. Typhoons struck the chateau headquarters of Panzergruppe West, wounding General Geyer von Schweppenburg, the commander, and eliminating most of his operation staff. General Sigismund Helmut von Dauwans, the Chief of Staff, and 17 other senior officers were killed outright. The attack consisted of 40 rocket-armed Typhoons in 3 waves and 61 B-25 Mitchell bombers. German armoured coordination stalled for 2 full days, granting the Allies crucial breathing room to press forward. The strike's efficiency sent a chilling message across the battlefield. Nowhere was safe. The tempo was relentless. 4 or 5 sorties per pilot per day became routine, a punishing cycle of climb, attack, and return. On the ground, Typhoon turnarounds were a spectacle of organised chaos. Ground crews, smeared with oil and sweat, replaced rocket loads in under 10 minutes, often while pilots remained strapped in their seats. The physical and mental demands on pilots were extraordinary. Some flew as many as 6 sorties on peak days. Horst Weber, an SS Panzer Grenadier, remembered the terror. We had 4 Tiger tanks and 3 Panther tanks. We were convinced that we would gain another victory here, that we would smash the enemy forces. But then Typhoons dropped these rockets on our tanks and shot all 7 to bits. And we cried. Stuart Hills, a British tank commander, recalled what happened when his column was ambushed by a Tiger tank on August 2nd, 1944. The Typhoons came in very low and with a tremendous roar. The second plane scored a direct hit and, when the smoke cleared, we could see the Tiger lying on its side minus its turret and with no sign of any survivors. The Falaise pocket. Apocalypse in the bocage. But heavily defended intersections of inland France lay ahead. By mid-August, German forces retreating to avoid being trapped in a pincer movement by Allied ground forces faced an apocalyptic scenario. Between August 12 and 21, 1944, the Falaise pocket represented the culmination of the Normandy campaign and the Typhoon's ultimate moment of dominance. The morning briefing carried a weight all its own. Reconnaissance photos lay across the table, cold and clinical. A lattice of tracks converged on Falaise, sidings jammed with fuel wagons and ammunition cars. Over 40 flak positions ringed the target, the inner defences bristling with radar-guided 88mm guns. On the dispersal line, Typhoons crouched beneath 8 RP-3 rockets and full 20mm ammunition belts. The extra ordnance added more than 200 pounds, weight that dulled agility and climb. Rocket rails dragged at top speed. Overcast skies offered concealment, but hidden landmarks forced navigation by compass and gut instinct. Falaise emerged from the haze. The rail yard sprawled below them, smoke curling from earlier strikes. Then the flak opened. Black puffs of 88mm fire blossomed at 3,000 yards. The Typhoons shuddered as fragments ripped at wings and fuselage. The shorter bursts of 40mm Bofors and 20mm cannons stitched the sky with flashes. Approaching from the southwest, pilots dove at 420 miles per hour, air screaming past the canopy. White rocket trails arced across the maelstrom, bracketing moving targets with pinpoint timing. Within seconds, pilots calculated range, wind, and target speed, firing pairs and singles in rapid succession. During the pullout, chaos filled their cockpits. Concussion waves rocked the fuselage, shrapnel pinged against armoured glass, and cylinder temperatures spiked as Sabre engines strained at maximum power. The stick shuddered in the pilot's hands, every control heavy and sluggish, G-forces slamming them into their harnesses. Compressibility buffeted the wings past 500 miles per hour, shaking the airframe and testing every ounce of skill. But the runs were successes. The Falaise strikes left the Germans reeling. Ammunition depots and marshalling yards burned. Tracks twisted under rocket impact, tanks rendered immobile. RAF 2nd Tactical Air Force records indicated that during the peak of the Falaise campaign, 2 TAF made an average of 1-200 attacks per day. Typhoons hadn't just attacked, they had shredded the infrastructure of resistance, carving a corridor for the Allies to push deeper into France. The war to its end. The liberation of Paris in August 1944 shifted momentum, but German resistance stiffened as Wehrmacht units fell back toward the Rhine. Typhoon squadrons adapted quickly, shifting from close support to strikes on command and logistics networks. Ultra-intelligence revealed the locations of headquarters and staff offices, allowing Typhoons to hit key targets with devastating effect. Communications were shredded, and operations paralysed for days. German commanders scrambled to move headquarters underground or disperse staff, making coordination even more fragile through the war's final months. In March 1945, Operation Varsity, the massive Allied airborne assault across the Rhine, put Typhoons to their next test. Over 1,700 transports and gliders carried 2 divisions behind German lines. Typhoons suppressed radar-directed 88mm guns along the Rhine, attacking low to avoid detection, yet within range of light anti-aircraft fire. Rockets tore through emplacements, scattering crews and neutralising defences. Over 400 sorties delivered paratroopers, often with pilots flying 6 missions a day, while ground crews refueled and rearmed in near-assembly line fashion. By April 1945, Group Captain J.R. Baldwin scored his 15th and final Typhoon victory. Pilots were credited with roughly 246 enemy aircraft, destroyed an extraordinary record for a primarily ground attack plane. Victory in Europe Day arrived on May 8, 1945, but Typhoon squadrons faced uncertainty. The RAF rapidly demobilised. Aircraft that had been indispensable months earlier became surplus. By October, squadrons disbanded, Typhoons scrapped, and the remarkable Napier Sabre engines dismantled for spare parts. Legacy and impact. Despite this swift retirement, the Typhoon's impact endured. Its constant attacks in Normandy disrupted German counterattacks, accelerating the breakout from the beachhead. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, the supreme German commander in the West, later called Allied air power, particularly rocket-equipped aircraft, absolutely decisive. Sidney Cam learned the hard way with the Typhoon thick wings and compressibility quirks, and an engine that could bite back. Those lessons shaped the Hunter. Thin, swept wings and a sleek airframe built to slice cleanly through transonic flight. With the Harrier, Cam went further. A rugged, simple airframe wrapped around the radical Pegasus vectored thrust engine. Wrestling the Napier Sabre taught him how to harness raw power without letting it destroy the aircraft. From Typhoon to Hunter to Harrier, Cam's genius was clear. Build tough machines around brutal engines and push the limits. Today, only one Typhoon remains, displayed at the RAF Museum in Hendon, North London. A testament to the aircraft that once seemed like an impossible failure, but became a war-winning weapon.